This is your call to become a community. This is your time to gather as people of faith and hope. This is your time for meditation, reflection, and prayer. Today, the Red River Unitarian Universalists call members and friends and passers-by and strangers and siblings and sojourners alike to come together by magic or machinery. It doesn't matter how, to worship here a while, right here and right now. It is the custom among Unitarian Universalists to light a chalice to symbolize that they're entering a time of meditation and worship together. You should see on your screen a chalice being lit. And while we see that chalice being lit, I have words to say for the lighting of the chalice. These words are from Maureen Killeran. And when I say them, you'll hear me say, "Let there be light." And I invite your response to say along with me, "Let there be light." As the kindling of this chalice calls us to community, let there be light. Let there be light. As the flame of this chalice reminds us of our values, let there be light. Let there be light. As the glow of this chalice encourages us to hope, let there be light. Let there be light. I hope you've lit a candle or a light of your own at home. I've got one lit behind me, and I hope I'll keep it going for all of us as this virtual community of faith gets going this morning. One other item that Red River Unitarian Universalists always do when they gather for worship is to say together an affirmation of their faith. And you'll see those words, and I hope you'll say them together with us. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another. Our opening thought for the theme of worship today is from the Gospel of Thomas. Jesus said, "Know what is in front of your face, and what is hidden from you will be disclosed to you. For there is nothing hidden that will not be revealed, and there is nothing buried that will not be raised." Our first reading today is from the Gospel of Thomas, which, if you're familiar with it, you know is the hidden, secret gospel that was discovered among the other texts at Nag Hammadi. These were secret first and second century alternative gospels written, the ones that didn't make it into the canon of the New Testament. So I like them for that. I like them for the fact that they themselves were hidden and then were revealed in 1945 when these gospels were discovered. This I'm reading from is what's called the Scholar's Translation. It was published in a book published by the Jesus Seminar called The Five Gospels, the search for the authentic words of Jesus. So here now, words from the fifth gospel. His disciples asked him and said to him, "Do you want us to fast? How should we pray? Should we give to charity? What diet should we observe?" Jesus said, "Don't lie and don't do what you hate, because all things are disclosed before heaven. After all, there is nothing hidden that will not be revealed, and there is nothing covered up that will remain undisclosed. Look, the sower went out, took a handful of seeds and scattered them. Some fell on the road, and the birds came out and gathered them. Others fell on rock, and they didn't take root in the soil and didn't produce heads of grass. Others fell on thorns, and they choked the seeds, and worms ate them. And others fell on good soil and produced a good crop. It yielded 60 per measure and 120 per measure." The disciples said to Jesus, "Tell us what heaven's imperial rule is like." And Jesus said to them, "It's like a mustard seed. It's the smallest of all seeds, but when it falls on prepared soil, it produces a large plant and becomes a shelter for birds of the sky." Here ends the lesson from the fifth gospel. A time of worship in person or in a virtual community generally will include a time for meditation or prayer, however your practices are. And I would invite you to enter that time from wherever you are. And we'll enter that time, I think, with words from Rainer Maria Rilke. This little poem is perfect for this time of meditation on things unseen and seen and questions and paradoxes that we may have in mind. So if you're willing, give yourself a moment and hear now these words for meditation. After that, we'll have a moment of quiet and then some music. Have patience with everything unresolved in your heart and try to leave the questions themselves, to love them as if they were locked rooms or books written in a very foreign language. Don't search for the answers which could not be given to you now because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps then someday, far in the future, you will gradually, without even noticing it, live your way into the answer. And now, stillness for a time.
joyful praise to thee. For the world we raise our voices, for the home that gives us birth. In our joy we sing, returning home to our blue green hills of earth.
The second reading is a poem by Joy Harjo, a Muskogee Creek Nation poet who happens also to be the United States Poet Laureate for 2019. This is called A Map to the Next World, where she describes how in First Nations creation mythology, we are living through the cycle of the fourth world and ready to emerge to the fifth world, where human beings will finally perhaps evolve. Here now, this poem directing us into our next stage of evolution. In the last days of the fourth world, I wished to make a map for those who would climb through the hole in the sky. My only tools were the desires of humans as they emerged from the killing fields, from the bedrooms and the kitchens. For the soul is a wanderer with many hands and feet. The map must be of sand and can't be read by ordinary light. It must carry fire to the next tribal town for the renewal of spirit. In the legend are instructions on the language of the land, how it was we forgot to acknowledge the gift, as if we are not in it or of it. Take note of the proliferation of supermarkets and malls, the altars of money. They best describe the detour from grace. Keep track of the errors of our forgetfulness. The fog steals our children while we sleep. Flowers of rage spring up in the depression. Monsters are born there of nuclear anger. Trees of ashes wave goodbye to goodbye, and the map appears to disappear. We no longer know the names of the birds here, how to speak to them by their personal names. Once we knew everything in this lush promise. What I'm telling you is real and is printed in the warning on the map. Our forgetfulness stalks us, walks the earth behind us, leaving a trail of paper diapers, needles, and wasted blood. An imperfect map will have to do, little one. But fresh courage glimmers from planets and lights the map printed with the blood of history, a map you will have to know by your intention or the language of suns. When you emerge, note the tracks of the monster slayers where they entered the cities of artificial light and killed what was killing us. You will see red cliffs, they are the heart, and tame the ladder. A white deer will greet you when the last human climbs from the destruction. Remember the hole of shame, marking the act of abandoning our tribal grounds. We were never perfect, yet the journey we make together is perfect on this earth, who was once a star and made the same mistakes as humans. We might make them again, she said. Crucial to finding the way is this: there is no beginning or end. You must make your own map. Here ends the reading. It's, I think, a brilliant device to begin with a brilliant poem by someone like Joy Harjo. I would like to be a poet as well. She is exactly my age, and I relate to her for that. Also, because she grew up not far from where I grew up in Oklahoma. I grew up in Texas, Baja, Oklahoma. It was popular when I grew up in the suburbs of Dallas for white girls to imagine or to claim that they had a Native American great grandmother somewhere. And it wasn't unlikely for some of the extended families of the girls that I knew to maybe have grandmothers or great grandmothers. Oklahoma was a territory that was nearby. It wasn't unlikely. I liked to claim, perhaps, being a Yankee, having moved down there, that maybe in my French Canadian ancestry there might have been a Chippewa ancestor, a grandmother, great grandmother, someone to explain my high cheekbones and my straight black hair at the time, someone to explain the sense that I had that I didn't belong in this hot, dusty, white world, this wasteland that I felt that I didn't really belong in. I believed in a world I hadn't yet seen, a forest somewhere that I should really be in. I believed I was someone I had not yet met. And though I was surrounded by a dominant white Protestant Christianity, I wasn't raised in it. Our family didn't go to the local churches. I simply couldn't really believe in it because I hadn't really seen it. It was only later in my life that I discovered that fifth gospel that was in the first reading. It was only later that I discovered there were other ways into Christianity. So it would be ironic that in my adulthood, I would learn two things. One, I have no trace of Native American ancestry in my lineage. We did our DNA. I'm whiter than white. I have a Norwegian and Danish and French ancestry. I was seeing something in myself that I believed, even though it wasn't really there. And also, the second thing that I learned in my adulthood was that once I allowed myself to believe in the imperial reign of heaven, then I could see it. I could see a fifth way, a fifth gospel, a fifth way for a non-believer to walk a Christian path. A fifth gospel of grace. Because later I learned there are some things that simply must be believed to be seen. Nobody really knows who first said that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but I'd like to have a few words with that person. They're pretty casual about some pretty important things. You want to know why I say that? Well, let's take my example. First, if three people look at, let's say, a Jackson Pollock painting, they're going to see three very different things. One person's going to see just a bunch of spilled paint. Another person is going to see a work of art worth millions of dollars, and a third person is probably going to just see a crime scene. It's a pretty wide spread of our impressions. Now think about the world and all of its infinite impulses and inputs, and multiply that times 7.5 billion people on the planet. That's 7.5 billion different realities trying to coexist on one planet. And by now, practically all of them with a YouTube channel. We are living in different universes entirely. And if you think about it, it's a miracle that any two of us can communicate at all. Mostly, I feel confident about my ability to take in and curate all of these multiple, infinite pieces of information. Except if you make me look at one of those magic eye paintings. Do you know what I'm talking about? They're actually called autostereograms. One of those paintings with 2D images that are hiding a 3D picture. Well, you're supposed to be able to see that 3D picture if you just make your eyes do right. I can't see it, no matter how long I look. I started to think everybody else was maybe tricking me. They were looking and saying they could see a picture when really there wasn't there. But then I read about it in Wikipedia. Turns out other people can't either. Ellen DeGeneres can't do magic eyes either, unless she's in on the joke also. But it occurred to me now that some people may believe that religion is like that as well, that here are all these people looking at the world, believing that they see God there or the divine, and that really they're just trying to fool everybody. They really don't see God in there. They're just saying they do to trick everyone. I don't think so. That they will say maybe that people who believe in God were indoctrinated into it. But not me. Remember, I was the only non-Christian in my neighborhood. I went to a few years of Unitarian Universalist Sunday school, but they don't indoctrinate you. They just say, oh, there's lots of ways to look at the world and go about your business, try to figure it out yourself. But I was always certain there was God. I would look at the universe and I would say, don't you see what's divine about this? Can't you see that there? I was just like people looking at a magic eye. I was just like that. You may be lucky enough or disturbed enough to see divinity, to see that 3D image in the 2D world, to see God hidden everywhere in plain sight throughout creation. But you may not be able to help anyone else see it. If nothing else, though, we should try not to act as if it's a trick. And with our worship, we could at least make a safe place for each of us to spend a moment contemplating our auto-stereograms. The fifth gospel, remember, it promises that what was hidden will be revealed. And I love it that the fifth gospel is the one that itself was hidden in the desert for centuries. It's the gospel that promises that heaven itself will see what is hidden. And that's Jesus the prophet promising this. Everything that is hidden will one day be revealed. Well, this could be a good thing. Maybe, for example, I could someday learn algebra, and I'll tell you why. The last math that I learned was geometry because I could see it. I could see the triangles and measure the angles. But algebra, I don't really believe in it. You ask a mathematician, they'll tell you, in fact, that some numbers aren't even real. Algebra, I couldn't see it. I don't believe in it, and therefore I couldn't learn it. By the way, algebra, I've got a message for you. Please stop asking us to find your ex. She's never coming back. Don't ask why. But everything that is hidden will one day be revealed, says the prophet. Here's another example of something that has to be believed before it can be seen. Whiteness. Whiteness is a good example of this. These days, there are a lot of protests in the street. People of color asking white people to examine their whiteness. Remember, I told you I grew up in a very white suburb. We were very white. I think I knew that. But these days, white people are still saying ridiculous things like, well, I don't see color. But people of color are telling them, look, again, they are highlighting what Joy Harjo, the poet, wants us to see, that the killing fields of the fourth world remain, not far from the shopping malls and the altars of money. Whiteness is a construct of race and power that has to be believed to be seen. Some things have to be believed to be seen. But once we believe something, then we can see it, then we can do something about it. I have an example from my real life. Let me tell you about it. Here's what happened. We've got a nice little backyard at our house that we bought. Well, I say we bought it. We've got a mortgage that we'll be paying off by the time we're 96. The backyard, I love it. It has many, many trees, so it's shady. That's the good news. But the bad news is it's so shady it won't grow any grass. So this last spring we realized it's dusty back there, and I decided I want to maybe build a little path out of pavers and rock and mulch. That way we don't have to try to water it, and we'll have a nice little place to go and sit and meditate and pray. So I told my partner, my husband Rocky, I said, let's build a little path out there. And I talked to him about it. I told him about it in words, so many words, like a Protestant worship service. And I kept describing it to him, and he wasn't getting enthusiastic about it at all. The more I told him about it, the less excited he got, and he kept forgetting how it was going to be, and he just couldn't see it. And I didn't understand why until finally I realized he couldn't see it because he couldn't really believe it. He didn't believe we could do it. And I realized, wait, I hadn't explained or let him know how I thought it was going to be possible. Where in the world did I think we were going to get the money? How did I think we were going to be able to do the work? So I had to back up a little bit and show him my work the way you have to do in algebra. I had to show him where I thought the savings would come from, how I thought we would earn the money, what the work would actually involve. And once he could believe that it was possible, then he could see it. And then his brain got going on it, and he had improvements to suggest, and he could see how it would be. And together we worked it out, and our family came and helped us. And once he could see it and we could both see it, then we could do it, and we did it. And it came out great. If people can believe in a new way of being, then they will be able to see it, and then they can do it. Right now, physics is teaching us to believe in the possibility of multiple universes. I believe that the people who are in the streets, the people of color leading them, are showing us a new way of being. That's real. I believe a new universe of worshipers in virtual congregations is a new way of being, and that's real. Here, where there is no beginning and no end. And although all of us are seeing this universe in our own unique ways, we probably all have this in common. Most often, it's not so much that we believe what we see, it's rather that we see what we believe. One thing I'm sure of, it is time for the liberal religious tradition to bring the good news. We may call it bringing about the fifth world if we know and study the traditions of the First Nations. More likely, it will be that we are bringing on, working for a number of hopeful campaigns for racial justice, that we overcome systems of violence and oppressions that, by gosh, maybe now we're just beginning to see and believe. It's wonderful to me that the fifth gospel, the Gospel of Thomas, which promises that more will be revealed to us, was itself hidden until 1945, till after the World War. And since then, so much has been uncovered about human beings. We've learned so much about our minds, our destiny, our potential. And still we are promised now heaven's imperial rule. Not the old language of the kingdom, which is hierarchical and male dominated, and I'm sorry, still reflects the old language of whiteness and violence. But heaven's imperial rule. The empire now belongs not to human beings, but to heaven itself, which is among us already. In heaven's imperial rule, we start to believe the impossible so that we can then see the possible. And that, my friends, is grace. Grace that must be believed to be seen. And so I hope now the people can all say, Amen. I leave you with this parting thought from A Map to the Next World. Crucial to finding the way is this: there is no beginning or end. You must make your own map. But we can also leave with this benediction from the Gospel of Thomas. Jesus said, "One who seeks will find, and for one who knocks, it will be opened." And now, as is the custom, the Red River Unitarian Universalists will extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.